animals can open that door to understand and feel and understand that level of connection and love and kindness that we want and need in our world. We're all our own separate beings, and what's so special about working with horses is there are those moments of harmony where you can connect with another being and it feels like you're moving together, having the same thoughts, having the same feelings, truly understanding each other. Through allowing us to be our own individuals, we can find those ways to come together.
Welcome to the Clarity Compass. Today we have a guest. Her name is Gillian Warner, and I'm really excited to talk to her about what I learned when she was a guest at Penn State University. We have the Bischoff Entrepreneur in Residence, and she was selected to come in and talk to all the classes in engineering entrepreneurship. She spoke to my class, and I was blown away, mainly because of the topic that I really want to dive into today. But first, welcome, Gillian.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
And the topic that she was speaking to, she'll go into equestrian training, equine training. And what took me aback is that she is philosophically flipping the script on the traditional way to train horses. But I don't want to speak to her philosophy, but let her do it in her own words. So go ahead, Gillian. Speak to what you talked about that kind of rocked my world, and you had a lot of questions about it once you entered into that kind of philosophy.
Yeah, it was great to have such a positive response from some farm students, but a lot of people who hadn't had much experience with horses. I've been working and riding with horses for the last 20 or so years. My entire life I've grown up riding horses, and my business, Warner Equine, has been in operation for the last 4 years. I'm coming from a competitive equestrian background in show jumping, eventing, dressage, but my business mainly focuses on starting young horses and training horses in a way that also encourages the rider or the handler to be very aware of their body, their emotions, so we can show up to be the most kind, consistent, and loving partner that we can be for our horses.
You mentioned that this is counterintuitive, how you are approaching it, creating a different way.
Yeah. I think a lot of my approach, I will also touch on, of course, the actual skill of riding a horse and kind of the mechanics of and technical skill there. But a lot of my training does focus on almost like an internal feeling as well. I do a lot of breath work and almost like a meditative approach in engaging with horses in a way that helps the rider and handler understand the space that they're in and how their body and breathing and feeling can have an influence on the horse, which isn't necessarily something that's discussed pretty frequently, or at least not something that I'd grown up really focusing on.
And what is the traditional way over thousands of years to train horses that you're maybe flipping the script on?
A lot of horse training in general has focused on pressure and release methods. I think pressure and release in most ways in our life, most avenues in our life, there's pressure, whether it's physical pressure or environmental, if there's a stressful circumstance, right? I think it's normal to feel some sort of pressure in the world, but in my training, I spend a lot of time also working without a bit. I work with horses, even bridleless, just with a neck rope, really working on body positioning and awareness, kind of the connection, and where my body is in relation to theirs as well.
And if you have people who are traditional ways of training horses, when they look in at you, what's their belief on your way of doing it?
That's a good question. I have a great group of clients that are very kind and loving and want to learn kind of the science behind equine behavior and how we can better understand how our horses see and smell and feel in the world around us, how sensitive their skin is, being able to feel a fly land on their back, right? And, how their vision takes longer to adjust in changes of light, and they have a great sense of smell. So, how can we use all of those senses to bring in a level of curiosity and just awareness of the world to help them feel more comfortable and confident and seen in the training, right? Like we can engage with them in ways that emphasizes their worldview and not just ours. So I have a lot of great support from the people around me, which is fantastic. I think it's probably not for everybody, but I think there are a billion ways to do most things in the world. So I'm lucky to have the circle around me that I do.
Would you consider your way innovative compared to the way the tradition has been?
Yeah, I hope so. I'm constantly learning and striving to do things better and learn more about our horses. And I think naturally that has a very innovative mindset, right? Just staying open-minded and curious and exploring, right? I'm always trying to do the best by my horses.
Now, in business, we say in motivating the people that are part of our team, we use the carrot or the stick. Which are you espousing philosophically on training horses?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And generally speaking, I'm trying to motivate a team and through trust, through positive associations, which in your question, I think would be more of a carrot than a stick. There are so many kind of experiences in this world that we can all have. And when you're working with a horse, you do everything that you can to prepare them for all of those life events. But, things come up and you might not necessarily expect a plastic tarp to be blowing in the wind one day or, a dog to come running out, right? Like there could be experiences that you can't foresee happening. And I think by emphasizing and building trust with a horse, when you are faced with those experiences, you have a very solid foundation where they turn to you for guidance to figure it out together instead of kind of every man for himself.
And I'm going to keep burrowing down on the traditional way horses over the thousands of years have been trained. I think you used the word whip. Has been the traditional way, the fear-based approach to getting horses to comply with your wishes to compete.
Horses are very large animals, and over a number of years, there are devices or techniques or tools that people can use to kind of level the playing field as far as physical strength. But in reality, we're never going to be as strong as a 1,200-pound animal. I'm trying to explore, instead of having tools that are bigger or louder, to try to level the playing field. Again, I'm trying to look at it a little bit differently, just to, kind of work with the horse and understand where they're coming from instead of pushing them to fit in our human world.
Instead of the push, you're using more of a pull through trust.
Yeah, kind of like trying to create a draw to each other, right? We're individuals for sure. A human or a horse, like we all, or even a human and a human, right? Like we're all our own separate beings. And what's so special about working with horses is there are those moments of harmony where you can connect with another being and it feels like you're moving together, having the same thoughts, having the same feelings, truly understanding each other. And that's, you try to seek out those moments as often as possible, and that's what's so beautiful about it. But they are fleeting moments. We can't exist as one forever. We are separate, which makes it really special.
And in those moments, let's call it flow, where you competed all over the world, and you with your horse, were you in these moments of flow where you have these fleeting moments where it's magical?
Yeah. I think I've been very lucky to have some really incredible partners with my horses. And so, those moments of flow is like, it's what we're all seeking, right? Just to feel connected to another being and to be creating something that's bigger than just yourself. And, I was able to feel that flow competing, finding a perfect rhythm and a perfect stride to the base of a jump and for everything, all of that training to work out so perfectly. There are moments of flow there for sure. Some of my favorite moments of flow are in the really quiet early mornings with my horses. If I'm doing some groundwork, some work where I'm not on them, but I'm standing next to them and just encouraging moments of connection, moments of flow, where I, try to watch their body language, their expression, to understand how they're feeling, what they're curious about, and also asking them to kind of turn towards me to connect with my breathing and my emotions as well. And in those moments, I can work with them if I'm standing next to them. If I pick up my energy and we're in that moment of flow, that moment of connection, they're picking up their energy with me at the same time. And if I exhale, they're exhaling with me. And it creates this moment where it almost feels like it's nobody's idea, but we're somehow doing it at the same time in the same way, which is mesmerizing. So I love seeking out those seemingly small moments where it's just me and my horse. It's nice and quiet, and it really feels like we're breathing and moving together.
Would you say this has given you a competitive advantage when you're in these mesmerizing flow state, you and the horse competing against other people?
Creating situations where you find those moments of harmony more and more frequently, and you strengthen that trust, you strengthen that bond. The more you know each other, the easier it is to kind of tackle the world together, whether that's in the show ring, the support the horse needs, they know how to turn to you, you know how to support them, and vice versa. And that will help you navigate a big technical jump course. Or if I'm out on the trail and we're used to these moments of harmony and there's a steep downhill or a rocky path that we have to kind of navigate together. If you're practicing and building that bond in the quiet moments, in the good circumstances, when things get challenging, when there's a pressure situation, again, whether that's an environmental, right? Pressure can be that big atmosphere at a show, or the challenging terrain on a trail, or a plastic bag blowing in the wind, right? In those stressful situations, you have all of that background to turn to, and you'll know how to help each other out.
And in a world that wants short-term results, how much time are you investing to earn that trust with the animal?
Yeah.
Compared to, again, traditional training?
Oh gosh, it's building trust with an animal is really challenging, and I don't think that I think it's something that you always work on, right? I've had my one horse for 17 years, and we know each other very, very well, and I continue to show up as a very consistent and kind partner, which only builds the trust. But, animals are very sensitive, and it's easy to break the trust as well. So I think it's something that it's a lifelong pursuit, right? And I think that's the case for interactions that we have with everybody in our life as well. It does take a while. It's slow and consistent. It's showing up every day, right? It's chipping away, being the person that you need to be for them and you want to be for them. And that it takes months, it takes years. Again, lifelong pursuit. But every horse is so different too. So some are a little bit more open and receptive to that connection, and others are a little bit more wary and takes a little bit longer to open up as well. So it's fun to get to know those personalities and show up how they need you to in those moments.
Now you're writing a book.
The book is called On Being with Horses. And
give a little subtitle to it in a sense.
On Being with Horses, again, just tries to highlight the philosophy and the lessons that we can learn and how we can strive to be a more kind and consistent horse person or a community member, from lessons in the barn.
When you talk about what you just talked about, and you talk about this book you're writing, I naturally think it's going to be a great business book. Will it be?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm excited to see kind of how the book comes out and is received. I started writing it envisioning in my mind almost like a little bit of a how-to manual, like a descriptive, almost textbook of the philosophy that I I try to bring to my training and communicate with my horses in training and clients. And as I was writing it, I couldn't do it. It felt very forced in that way. And so I started playing around with like the format and the approach to the book, and it's become a little bit more of a kind of a creative pursuit. It is my philosophy and touches on my philosophy, but it's trying to articulate the feelings and the lessons that we can learn from horses in a series of short stories and some visuals from a close friend of mine who's a photographer, and so in collaborating that way, I've been able to put all those pieces together to hopefully bring a feeling that I'm trying to bring through my work with horses, but also this book as well.
And so interesting, you said as you were doing the book, workbook, textbook, it felt forced. Is that at the heart of your philosophy? Is that you don't let the power, the whip, the stick, anything forced, it back to this flow world, where you don't want it to be more of a creative pursuit. Is that kind of the hallmark of your philosophy, the why, perhaps? You don't want to force, you don't want to whip, you don't want to use power over the animal using, you said, equilibrium devices to get to the 1,200-pound leveling. You're using it, and the punchline for me is this truly love over fear?
I think what I love about the work that I do is I love the animals so much, and they've taught me so much, and I can see how much of an individual, they are, I am, right? We all have our individualized experiences, wants, needs, fears that we bring to the table. The word allow keeps kind of bouncing into the front of my mind, where I want to allow them to show up how they're showing up. I want to allow them to choose and allow them to express themselves. Through allowing us to be our own individuals, we can find those ways to come together, right? Not every horse will respond to the same question the same way, right? Not every horse, some horses need different approaches or different timelines, right? So by allowing everybody to be themselves, we're actually able to come together in a more honest and truthful way, which I believe allows for better work, rather than forcing everything to happen in a one-size-fits-all kind of standard that, might produce some work, but might not be an honest work.
Right. And so you mentioned you learned so much from the horses that you train. Can you share the things that you've learned?
Oh, man. It's wild to think about how many kind of versions of myself and transformations I've gone through with the horses. And, from a young age, right off the bat, I started riding when I was 4, consistently when I was 6. And riding is a small part of working with horses, right? Like you get to groom the horse, you get to feed the horse. I spent all of my free time at the barn, right? It was impossible to drag me away. And, from a young age, I was taught to care for another being other than, myself. I was always looking out for their needs as well. So that teaches responsibility. It teaches empathy. You spend a lot of time with the people around you in the barn, and you turn to them in the good times and the bad times, and that builds community. I felt love. I felt grief and heartbreak and trust with another being. And there's so many components and lessons that the horses have shown me just by, showing up for them and living with them, that I also really believe creates a very strong foundation to then take that out into the world and apply those same lessons to the people in your life as well.
Wow. And so back to your book, we're talking about horses, and, again, for what you stand for, traditionally the way horses are trained, this is very progressively, innovatively different. What would the detractors say about this? Or, even people saying, wow, such love for the animal. and it's a business. Mm-hmm. What would the detractors in the horse training business say about your practice, your philosophy, your approach? Would they say that's wacky?
Sure. I think anything can be a little wacky for somebody, right? Like, again, not everybody follows the same approach or have different goals or perspectives on it. I'm learning something new every day, and I pursue, academic study and self-study to understand the science behind horse behavior and try to apply that into the way of being with horses that I really enjoy and feel connected to. Again, not for everybody, I'm sure, but I'm hoping to at least spur a conversation of how we can consider different methods of horsemanship and management of horses to make sure all of their needs and wants are met as well.
Well, capitalism is a big part of the industry, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned a $4 million horse, and so when someone entrusted you with a $4 million asset, mm-hmm. Kind of looking at the results, which strategic filter is better, your philosophy or the old way? To get the maximum value out of that horse.
Maximum value. Well, and so I think too, I grew up competing and have worked in a number of competitive barns over the years. And I still do compete for a few clients. My approach, my focus, my interests have changed where I definitely don't compete nearly as much as I used to. Again, for training purposes or, to kind of try something new and explore something with a horse. A few of my clients enjoy showing as a way to enjoy their horses, but I haven't been as involved in that specific side of the industry since I've started my business. And I think that's probably because the timeline and the approach that I take doesn't necessarily line up with the timeline of all competitive worlds. But I do have friends who compete regularly and have a similar kind of mindset and approach to being with horses. So it's definitely possible, and something that, I think a majority of horse people really genuinely love and care for their horses. I know they do. So it's, I think it's a conversation that is being had, and will continue to be had.
Well, I unabashedly cheer on your philosophy. and really one of the reasons I'm having these podcasts and having these kind of discussions is I think we're at an inflection point in leadership where it's been fear-based for centuries. Mm-hmm. And just studying the stock market and studying leadership, the love-based, heart-based, mm-hmm. You're talking with connection to animals, that same connection to your employees, to your teammates, has been proven in my study to be the more enduring strategy, mm-hmm. the more long-term versus short-term. Absolutely. And the connection and the loyalty that the team feels for insert company name, if mm-hmm. they have your approach. So I think your philosophy for parenting, for leadership, for running companies, you said we're in discussion about it, but I'm seeing unequivocal proof that it's mm-hmm. a better operating system, not only for ourselves, but for the people we work with and companies we run and teaching and coaching and training horses. And that's why I can't wait for your book. That's why I'm delighted you're here. You've been at it now, kind of advancing your approach for how many years?
My business has been in operation about 4 years.
And can you say the people who are coming through the law of attraction to your way, to your philosophy, to your reputation, to your credibility, to your proven track record of winning, what are they saying when they're in your dojo, if you will, in kind of embracing into your world? What are your customers saying and the results they're getting from why they came to you?
Yeah. So my business tagline motto is building partnerships, right? And I think, again, allowing individuals to show up as they are, to put trust at the forefront is huge, because when an animal is calm and relaxed, they're able to learn, right? And I think that's the same for people as well, right? If you're comfortable, if you're happy, if your needs are met, you're going to be in the best position to learn and participate, which means good work, right? Again, I'm so fortunate to have incredible clients, incredible horses that I work with. And I've been really pleased with seeing the progression of a lot of the partnerships in the program. I've had horses that have come in a little bit kind of uncomfortable out of the ring, right? And spooky, uncertain scenarios. And they've been able to overcome that nervousness to become really solid trail partners. Those clients have been really excited about being able to enjoy new experiences with their horses in that way. And just the confidence that I've seen develop both with the horses as they take a breath and find that kind of centered calm, and as they're with their riders, right? And I see the riders finding that comfort and that trust and connection. And, when you have that trust and connection and calm confidence, I mean, oh my gosh, they've been able to do so many things that they haven't necessarily allowed themselves to dream about doing before, right? So just seeing them kind of exceed even the goals that they've come to me with has just been really rewarding.
And when you get a horse that you say is nervous, do you enjoy working with those horses more than the ones that maybe come to you that have been trained in your philosophy? Do you like to reverse where they were headed from their probably, I'm assuming, fear-based training? You get them, and then do you enjoy working with that horse versus one?
I think I've been able to learn something from every horse that I've been able to work with. And there are a few horses that, it was such a slow progression because of tension and nervousness. There are a few times I was like, oh my gosh, is this going to work? Can I accomplish these goals in a way that feels good for the horse and for myself as well, right? I was like, ooh, they're so tense and they're tight, and you can see that they're, looking around distracted. You can feel the tension radiating from their body. And I stuck with it and kept breathing and using my body position, and slowly but surely it worked. And again, building that trust, I was like, oh, these horses would try anything with me, right? I really felt like they were a great partner. And I think overcoming that much together just made us that much stronger. But, there were a few times I was like, I don't know if this is going to happen. And it did. It just took a lot of commitment on my part to kind of stick with it and trust the process.
Now, coming at it from a business standpoint, you are an entrepreneur, you have your own business, you have clients. How do you have the client patient enough for you to invest the time to bring the calmness to the horse?
Yeah.
Is that months? Is that years? In a world that's saying, hey, I need that horse next week to compete. How do you talk down your clients to say, you got to be patient here?
Right. The people that find me already know my approach is a certain way, or, they know I do compete. I have competitive experience, but it's not at the forefront of my business, right? So if somebody really wants to be competing every weekend and that's their goal, my business is probably not the right fit for them. People find their way to the situation that's best for them. I'm happy to support and explore new things and try new things with people. Open communication and honest communication with my clients is huge. Everybody that I work with adores their horses, right? They would do anything to make sure that their horse is happy and healthy, which is amazing. And that's something I love about my business is the community around me. They share that commitment and passion. If that is our end goal, if that is our overarching goal, is just having a horse that's happy and comfortable and loves to be with us, if we have to tweak a timeline or change an approach or explore something, right, they're open to it, right? And we have that conversation and we break down that goal and what that means and how we can achieve that together.
But it sounds like if a client wants to force something, you would say no. You would say, we're not doing that. That's just not my style. I'll recommend someone who has that approach.
If something feels forced, first I pause, I take a breath, I assess the situation. It's like, okay, horses are herd animals and they're designed generally to cooperate, right? Like they want to cooperate with the herd because herd is safety and safety is life and, all of that good stuff. And, we're very social animals as well. So, if our goal is cooperation for everybody's best interest and they're saying no, that's clear that something is happening. And I always make sure there's no like physical reason that the horse is incapable of doing something. And but then, if they're physically able to and fine, and there's still some sticky point, it's like, okay, well, what isn't clear, right? I'm not doing my job well enough to have a clear question that they can answer successfully, right? So it's like I could ask you, what day is it, right? And you might answer with a date. And I'm like, no, what day is it? And you might say, the day of the week, right? There are so many answers to one question. And so if I'm not getting the answer that I want, I have to clarify and rephrase what I'm asking, instead of just yelling at you louder, right? It's like, okay, well, maybe I'm not asking clearly enough.
Wow. Where did you learn? Did you learn this all in the barn? I mean, what was your major here at Penn State?
I studied community environment and development. So my focus was on community economic development, a lot of local politics, local governance, and interacting with groups of people.
So that's your background, and that applies to your business, it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
And when you not pursued the entrepreneurship and horse training and lessons, and would you be in that field, and would you be seeking flow in communities?
100%. I love communities.
And when you're all your curriculum and things, how do you get all of those disparate organizations in any town USA to work together to have the same experience you have with a horse? That flow moment where the community is growing and social fabric is getting stronger. Mm-hmm. Would you enjoy that if you got out of the horse business? You get in there. How would that manifest itself? Where would you be like in 5 years in that line of work?
That's a great question. After I graduated from Penn State, I love communities, and I loved the SEED major is the nickname. It's in the College of Agricultural Sciences.
What's it called?
SEED, CED. It's a very small major, which is fun to have a small cohort of people that know each other well, with also a diversity of interests. A lot of people go on to do a variety of things within environmental work or local government or Peace Corps, right? There's a lot of different things that people have done with it. I was curious if I would do horses full time or if I would find a different quote unquote normal job, which, I do think I have a kind of normal job, but maybe not a traditional job in that sense. But I did explore kind of community development work, which is kind of essentially what I'm doing. No matter where I go or what I do, I've seen the power of community, and I think it's critical for people or for animals in general to have a sense of safety within a group that cares for them, stands with them, supports them, trusts them, they can trust each other. I try to bring that into building community among my clients, building community with my horses. If I didn't do horses, I would try to be building community maybe here in State College. I love this town, and I try to engage with a non-horse community here as much as I can as well. So yeah, I could absolutely see myself doing this kind of work in different ways.
And which community do you prefer, the horse community or the human community? Or they're both the same. Man. Yeah. What is your take on working so closely with humans and working so closely with horses and humans? Yeah. I mean, what can we learn from each other, and which do you prefer?
Oh man, I don't know if there's if I have a specific answer for that. I love working with horses. They're so sensitive and, responsive, so expressive with just their facial expressions or their body language. And it's amazing to kind of pick up on those cues and respond to those. So I do love that work. Otherwise, I don't think I would be doing what I'm doing. But I love interacting with people as well. I love deep, meaningful conversations and comedy and just engaging with humans as well. So I don't know if I have a preference. I love both of them. But I do think that we can learn a lot from each other. I think the sensitivity and attention to detail that I've learned from the horses has allowed me to ask better questions and kind of be a little bit more curious and thoughtful in the interactions I have in the human world as well. So I think, and again, like the lessons that I've learned in the barn have translated so easily to the work in community development that I've done, and they feed back and forth from each other.
And so your philosophy equals your why. And back to this inflection point where I think for a variety of reasons, we're deciding if we want to have an operating system based on love and we want to kind of shelve the one we grew up with based on fear. I am assuming you have many people beating a path to your door because you've put the aura out there of your philosophy and your why, and you have no doubt loyal customers who speak highly of you. How are you handling the volume of people who now want to work with you? How are you pushing them away? Because I'm imagining you're pretty popular and people are attracted to it, because I'm finding people are attracted to your type of philosophy more now than ever.
Yeah. And, people are so curious about animals and horses. And I think animals can open that door to understand and feel and understand that level of connection and love and kindness that we want and need in our world. So I am fortunate to try to provide and open up accessible options to interacting in those spaces. I have a close partnership with Tadpole Lane Farm in Pennsylvania Furnace and work with their lesson program as well as running my business. And so, there are ways for people to engage, if not directly in my business, also through the barn. I try at the barn, I host community clinics and horsemanship clinics where, even if you're not a regular client, if you're curious about something, we have these clinic days where I'll go over a topic or we'll explore something together. But I am also hopeful that by publishing this book, I'll be able to kind of reach a broader audience that way. In addition to my regular work, in addition to the clinics, I travel to do clinics as well, like a weekend trip here or there. But I'm also hopeful that this book, can express that philosophy and kind of the kindness and love and trust that I strive to bring to every interaction that I have. I hope that will help articulate that as well.
Since you're so deep into the philosophy and the why and your own motivations to want to do the book and maybe do a TED Talk, my question is, why is the other operating system, fear versus love, love versus fear, force, power versus cooperation, and why is the other one winning so much? And how do we continue to enlighten that there's a better way to support and grow horses into their potential and humans into their potential from a parenting, business ownership, teaching, just traditional way that the operating system seems to be so fear-based?
I think you mentioned earlier kind of timelines, right? Building that trust, as I expressed, takes months, years, a lifetime to build and maintain. And it's more of an investment that you have to choose versus, I think, traditional approach in most things in our life, horse or human or any community, you can get results faster through a fear-based approach, right? Or through force, or, right? If it does get results, right? And if
often great results,
right,
is why it's such a competitive
it's
challenge.
Competitive.
Yeah.
Right.
It works, fear.
Yeah.
It's worked to build, everything.
Yeah. And I think the measure of success, we might need a slightly different measure of success. If it's looking specifically at financial growth or output, you're not going to mass produce a feeling kind-based training approach, right? If you mass produced it, it wouldn't be the same approach. And so, it's again, a conscious, everyday, lifelong choice that individuals have to make. But, success might not be measured with the same financial output or the same number of ribbons, but instead of feeling that you get and the closeness of connection. And, there are other measures of success that might make it more competitive, again, in the horse world or in the world with humans as well.
Right. Well, I've been teaching here at Penn State since 2007, and I've been blessed in a front row seat to have students from all over the world, from different parts of the world. And it's been fascinating studying this fear-based optimized child, through various school systems where the measure of success was an A+ in standardized tests. So you went through that system, and now you have this philosophical, what I'd say is a flipping of the script. Looking back on you, and you mentioned safety, we're herd, biologically safety's in the herd. Safety is kind of why we're optimized from our parents. They want us safe. So I'm in this curriculum of entrepreneurship where we're encouraging risk-taking, and be in absolute love with solving a problem for your customer. And I'm finding it's tough in the more fear-based upbringing for them to even grasp the concept philosophically of being in love with solving a problem for someone other than yourself to get a good grade.
Sure.
So your book and things, that's why I'm saying it's a business book, it's a philosophy book, it's it could be a very transformational book, utilizing your expertise in horse training to help we humans and parents and CEOs and shareholders on short-term versus long-term, scarcity versus abundant, all the growth-minded things where I'm betting on your philosophy all in. But, what have you seen even in your own upbringing on how you transformed into this philosophy?
That's a big question. I'm very lucky with a very curious and very active, loving family and community as a whole, right? Growing up mostly in state college, but my parents were always encouraging me to go take risks and try things. I spent a lot of time traveling to work with horses and compete and try this and do that and just experiment, right? I think my parents were very encouraging for me to try, and that failure was okay, right? It was okay to mess up and kind of fall on my face and figure out how to pick myself up and keep going. And that taught resilience, and things can be very scary to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I think by even doing little things often to kind of push yourself out of your comfort zone, it doesn't have to be big, but if you're feeling uncomfortable about, going to a cafe alone, maybe go to a cafe and grab a good book and, sit there by yourself and just kind of sit in that slight discomfort for a little bit. Start with kind of pushing yourself where you feel uncomfortable a little bit every day until it doesn't feel so scary to take a leap, and know that you have the skill set to figure it out if it doesn't go well, right? So I was very lucky to have a support team to encourage me to try that. And failure is part of life, not something that you can avoid, but you should kind of embrace right. Because it means you're growing, right? And, then you might have to pivot or make some tweaks here and there, but it's the same thing as working with a horse that's a little bit nervous. You don't throw them into the deep end and say, figure it out. You give them the tools that they need to succeed, and then help them navigate little bits often, right? Be like, look, it's not that bad. We can use all of these tools. Okay, now we're on to the next thing. And you just start integrating those moments into your life is, I think, could be really helpful.
Are you going to become a teacher?
I do already teach riding lessons, so
right.
A little bit in that way. I love spending time outside, so I'm not sure I'm built for the classroom, but I like the barn as a classroom.
And this book coming out, and you got to do a TED Talk now. How are you going to deal with the people who want in on your philosophy, want in on your skill set, especially with their children, no doubt, to learn this craft that helped you have your worldview and your joy for life? How are you going to deal with the volume of people who want into the Gillian Warner training methodology, the philosophy that is well beyond just training horses and children?
Yeah, I think, there's so many ways to kind of grow and adapt. And, I do practice for myself too every day, right? I do this work, I work at this work every day for myself. So I can live it and I can be it. It's honest, right? It's who I'm trying to be. It's who I am. So I hope, if nothing else, I can be an example that it's something that, a way of being that you can be around horses. And, again, the book, I travel for clinics, through Tadpole, we do have summer camps, right? So there are ways to engage. I've had a few friends that have encouraged me to do some more like online content, things that might not be a one-on-one session, but ways to kind of engage with the material that's a little bit different than what I currently offer. So I'm trying to explore what that looks like exactly, but those feel like big, uncomfortable questions. So maybe that's my next kind of uncomfortable situation to work through is, okay, in what ways does this expand? Can this expand? What does that look like?
Well, I'm a believer, certainly now, spending time with you and in my class and the students' reaction to you, that your biggest challenge is going to be dealing with the volume of people who want in because of the law of attraction to your philosophy and your whole approach. I'm banking on that. And what would you like to kind of tell the audience who's kind of dialed in, listened here a little bit? Anything I missed, a question I didn't ask, or anything you want to share as we wrap up?
I think, whether or not you engage with horses, I think trying to find ways to engage with another being or a community or an animal in a way that's kind and loving and trusting only spreads more good into the world, right? Even though it might just seem like one interaction, it might change that person's day and they might have an influence on 2 other people who have influences on 5 other people, right? So those things that seem little, right? Those baby steps, little bits often go way, way, way further than you might ever imagine. So whether or not you work with horses, trying to kind of push yourself to test out the method in that way too would be kind of just a fun experiment, thing to do.
No, that's great. What a way to end. And thank you, Gillian.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
And thanks for listening to the Clarity Compass. And wow, you just got the prescription, I think, to follow the North Star. And I really appreciate the time today. I learned so much. Thanks for listening to the Clarity Compass, and see you next episode. Thank you.